it's time for the AMA. So you guys had a lot of questions and hopefully I have the answers for you. I thought this would be a nice way to celebrate the community that we together have built so far, and I just really wanted to show my appreciation to you guys. Cash College is very much in its baby stages right now, so you guys are really the original fans and you're very much going to help shape the community going forwards. So thank you so much for the support so far, and let's get to some questions. So the first question we have is from Taylor. Who's your incredibly talented videographer? Now technically this question actually has two answers. For the most part, it's me. I do pretty much all of the videography. That's one of my passions. I love creating things through video. But there's also a second person who will do some of the shots sometimes, and she deserves a lot of recognition and credit because that is my girlfriend Justine, and I actually bug her a lot to help me out with shots that I definitely just can't get on my own. Sometimes you definitely need a second set of hands to get certain types of shots, like if I was doing something like a tracking shot or just holding the camera in a way that a tripod's not going to be suitable to do that. She has definitely been a huge help, and she's actually done all the branding for Cash College and helps me out a lot with kind of the visual conceptualizing of things like how I lay out my graphics and stuff like that. So I really probably couldn't have done all this without her. Mariano asks, how is your creative process to do YouTube videos? So my creative process is definitely always changing. It's very fluid, and that's because I get inspiration from so many different sources that it comes at unpredictable times. But generally for me, writing is a huge part of the creative process. I really need to write out my ideas, write out my videos. I try and script and plan all the different aspects of my videos. I'll come up with a shot list that I need to execute to get the shots I need. I'll come up with inspiration and different ideas for the type of B-roll that I want to get. But ultimately with each video, what I'm trying to do is find the right balance between providing you with something that's educational, informative, and that you can walk away from that video feeling like, hey, I learned something new today that's going to improve my life, while providing some measure of entertainment value. I want you to feel good when you're watching my videos. I want you to feel engaged with them, especially when it comes to finance, which can be a really intimidating subject for a lot of people. I want to make it fun. And personally, I have fun when I try and do that. And you know, when I'll try and do skits that are funny and things like that, I don't know if you guys are actually going to find them funny. Sometimes I think I have a really strange sense of humor, but I enjoy making them, and that's really important to me. Kevin says, hey Steve, how would you define success at the moment? Oof, now that's a hard question. I feel like my definition of success will be very fluid throughout life. I think it'll always be changing as I kind of, succeed in various ways and then kind of realize what success actually means to myself. But right now, I think probably the best way that I would think about success is the cessation of desire. And what I mean by that is, so when we have something that's goal-oriented, it's like, I want to achieve this. Once we achieve this goal, you might consider that to be success. But I would only consider it to be success if that's kind of eliminated that desire that you had before, because otherwise we can end up where we're kind of on this treadmill where you succeed in one way, but then you're still not content because you're still desiring something else. So I think success would be kind of the ending of those desires, when you're finally kind of, content or at least content in that one category. You've succeeded, and now you don't need that next thing. You don't need that next goalpost in order to be happy. So I think happiness and contentment are very much an important part of achieving success. And that's probably the metric that I would want to use to kind of quantify success. H24J1F123 asks, what's your background education? So I actually studied finance in university, specializing in accounting. And accounting actually happens to be pretty much the language of business. And that's because any business transactions have to be recorded by accounting. And then ultimately those get compiled into various financial statements, which are really useful to know how to read, especially if you're an investor. So accounting is actually a really good degree to study, in my opinion, but I didn't want to be an accountant. I didn't want to be a CPA. I was much more interested in the investment side of things, and I'm also very much interested in creative things. So ultimately I combine my love for filmmaking and photography and just creating things with my knowledge of finance, personal finance, and investing, and created this, which I think is a really, really good balance between those two things for me. Aiz says, "Hi Steve, what are your lifetime financial goals, and are you using sinking funds?" So my lifetime financial goals is to become financially independent, which basically means that I don't have to rely on an income source outside of myself. So that basically means I don't need a job to sustain myself, and that I can live purely off of my own investments, which essentially allows me to do exactly what I want with my time. That is my lifetime financial goal. As for sinking funds, I don't use sinking funds specifically. Instead, I generally just have a pretty set amount of money that I save every month that gets moved into a high interest saving account, which is kind of the place where that money goes before I give it a job, or sometimes it just sits in there if it's something like an emergency fund. I personally keep this money that moves into my savings. I keep it at EQ Bank because in my opinion, they're the best high interest savings account in Canada, and it's super easy to move money in, move money out because the account is free, they have unlimited e-transfers, and they also have a really reliable high interest rate. It's not promotional and it doesn't fluctuate in value as much as some of the other people, and I really like their website. So actually, if you're interested in a really good place to park your money or to put it in for saving for different things, it's a great place to start a sinking fund for sure. You can use EQ Bank, and I'll put a link in the description down below so you can see the exact account I'm talking about and open one up if that interests you. Your friend Andy asks, "Hey Steve, maybe you've answered this in previous videos, but I'd love to know where your filmmaking skill and interest came from. Your videos look great and are fun to watch. Was it your job? Just a hobby? Let me know." Well, thank you so much for the compliment, first of all. My filmmaking interest actually started when I was really young. I used to make kind of home movies with my brother and my cousins or some of my friends at the time. We made things like horror movies, and then we eventually got into kind of like fantasy style movies, you know, with like swords and magic and all that type of stuff. It was really fun to do that with like a VHS recorder tape, and sometimes we would actually even do little movies where we'd use like army figurines and do kind of like stop motion. There was a lot of really fun things that I like to do with video especially. And then I kind of lost it as I moved kind of through the high school age, but then I rediscovered it in university when I actually picked up a new digital camera before I went on a trip to Europe. And I did a lot of photography on that trip, but then I also started experimenting with video again, and then I started documenting my travels with video, but then I wanted to tell more stories through video format, as well as maybe even provide some kind of educational content as well. And so it was kind of a progression through life where I started out with that love for it. I kind of lost it on the way, but then I rediscovered it and paired it with some new skills that I had learned along my path in life and kind of put those two things together. Jacob says, "Huge fan of the videos. As an 18-year-old starting to build up their TFSA, what would you invest in and what sectors would you favor?" So I would definitely recommend investing your money in an index fund. I know when you're young, it can be really tempting to try and pick your own stock, especially things like penny stocks or options or, you know, companies that you think are relatively undiscovered and that you have this special in or this special knowledge on this one company that could increase a lot in value. It could happen. You could get lucky with these things. And in some ways, it's actually beneficial to make mistakes earlier on with less money so that you don't make them later on with more money. I got all of that out of my system at an early age. I day traded. I traded penny stocks. I traded binary events like biotech phase 1, 2, and 3 trials. I traded options. I tried everything. I tried all the ways that people basically said you could make a lot of money quickly if you had some skills that you could apply to investing. But the truth is, it's more luck than anything else, and you can't control luck. But when you invest in an index fund, you eliminate luck out of the equation completely. And you almost guarantee long-term gains as long as the global economy continues to function. So for you, I would recommend looking at something like VGRO or VEQT. They're all-in-one index ETFs by Vanguard that are great. They have everything you need in it. And if you put money in that right now when you're 18, man, honestly, if you hold that for a long period of time, that's going to grow into an incredible amount of money down the road. Next up, we have Brian Aya. What channels and creators do you enjoy watching on YouTube? Personally, I really like watching videos on YouTube that'll help me learn something new or help inspire me creatively. And for that reason, I'll watch a lot of filmmaking channels, somebody like Peter McKinnon or Matty Hapoya, as well as Matt Diavella, because I really like his filmmaking style and storytelling. But he also has a lot of good substance to his videos where he'll talk about a lot of self-development and productivity. And for that reason, I also like Nathaniel Drew's channel as well, because he combines those similar elements, filmmaking and kind of thought-provoking self-development ideas. Next up, we have Mayank Rawat. Hi Steve, I would like to know how you have invested, TFSA, RRSP, and personal. So that's a bit of a really big question, so I'll just kind of try and lay it out really simply without going into extreme details. So for me, I invest in my TFSA using index funds that I personally choose. In my RRSP, I actually recently transferred this over to Wealthsimple so that everything can be automated and I can set up things like automatic deposits and stuff like that. So since RRSPs are such a long-term investment, I kind of don't want to have to put too much attention into those right now. And I like the idea of automating everything because I have a lot of things that I'm managing in my life right now, and I'd like to take some of the pressure off some areas of my life. And I don't think I've mentioned this in a video yet, but I actually do have a partnership with Wealthsimple where if you sign up through the link that's in my description below, you can actually get an extra $50 added to your investment account when you deposit $500. So it's a nice way to get free $50, which is essentially an immediate 10% return on your money. So if you were considering using Wealthsimple before, definitely check out that link below so you can get that extra $50. Tram Luong asks, where do you live in Canada? So I personally live in Toronto right now. I moved here about over probably almost 3.5 years, I think. 3.5 years. And I love it here. I really, really love it. It was a big change for me because I grew up in a small town. But changing to the city has been awesome for me in terms of my growth and just being exposed to so many new things. I also really like living in like a metropolitan area like this because everything I need to do, I can walk out my front door and access super easily. I can go to the grocery store, bakery, whatever I want to do. It's really easy to access. And there's also a lot of great connections to make. I've met so many interesting people living here in Toronto that I think will contribute very much to the trajectory of my career. Brooke says, congrats on 5K. Thank you. Once you get FU money, what types of things do you want to pursue? Will you keep up cash college? Now that's a long question to answer. I've got a lot of ideas and a lot of things brewing in my mind of what I want to do. A lot of those things involve basically learning new skills. I want to see and experience as much as possible in life. And I really want to devote a lot of my time later in life to actually trying to basically find the answers to some of life's biggest questions. They very much interest me and I think about them a lot. Will I keep up cash college? I think definitely. I think I'll always be interested in helping people figure out how to manage their money because ultimately money leads to freedom and then freedom allows you to live the life that you actually want to live. So money is kind of the gateway to that. So I think I'll always be interested in helping people figure out that situation so that they can really live the life that they want to live. VGen asks, a random one, what do you use to hang your backdrop? I basically use something really simple actually. It's just these hooks that I found at Home Depot that you can drill into a wall, and then I basically got a wooden dowel that you can attach to those hooks and Basically, the dowel goes through the opening in the backdrop and then just sits on the hooks just like that. It was really cheap, really simple, do-it-yourself solution. Samurais asks, is it a bad time to invest in USD? Unfortunately, I don't have the answer to that question. Nobody knows when it's a good time, when it's a bad time. It's really impossible to predict markets with reliable accuracy. You might be right some of the time, you might be wrong some of the time, but I can't say either way whether it's a good or a bad time to invest in USD, unfortunately. Maybe if it was trading at par with the Canadian dollar like it was years ago, I might be more inclined to say it might be a good idea to convert some of your money, but right now, I can't say one way or another. Okay, now this is a really interesting one. MMM sent me a message basically sending me this video that CBC Marketplace did. And CBC Marketplace is basically when CBC goes to investigate something in the finance world usually. And in this case, they investigated Equifax, TransUnion, Credit Karma, and Borrowell to basically take a look at what credit scores actually are. But basically what it comes down to is that in Canada, there are several different types of credit scores. So the credit score that you receive from these different companies might not necessarily be the credit score that a bank would use or that a mortgage broker would use. So your credit score might not be as accurate as you think, because using one of these websites, it might say that you have a really good credit score, but the credit score that the bank is looking at could be very different. And these companies actually can't show you that exact credit score that banks can look at, because in Canada, the way the rules are set up is that you can't see the credit score that your bank has on you, which is really terrible. I think that's ridiculous. We should absolutely be able to have that information and understand why they're rating us a certain way. So thank you so much for sharing that link. That's something that I'm definitely going to try and dig into more and learn more about for sure. But that's not to say that your credit score is completely meaningless. It can still give you an idea of how good your credit is, and it can also allow you to make sure that your information is accurate so that you don't see any credit accounts open tied to you that actually aren't. So basically it's a way to check that no one's committed identity fraud against you as well. Shunak asks, what would be your suggestion to a student 20 years old with only scholarship money in hand? I would have to know more information about your financial situation to give you proper advice, so I don't want to tell you something and it to be the wrong information. So instead, I'll just say something that's very general. When you're young, and especially when you're a student, one of the best things you can do is invest in yourself. And that doesn't have to be monetarily. Instead, I would think more about it like skills and education and social network that you can build right now. Because with something like compound interest that applies to our money when we invest it, it has an exponential curve like that, right? But also with our own knowledge and self-development and the people we meet, that can have an exponential curve too. We can kind of get this compound interest on those things in our life as well by starting really early and applying a lot of effort and dedication to those. So I would say when you're young, do as much of that as possible, because the sooner you get started on it, the sooner you'll hit that part of the exponential curve where things go crazy. But also don't forget to have fun. All right, so I think I'm going to have to wrap it up there. I'm very sorry if I wasn't able to get to your question. There was a lot and I tried to do the best that I possibly could. I just wanted to say thank you so much to you guys once again. I'm really proud and excited of this community that we're building together, and I hope you guys are too. I hope you guys enjoyed interacting in this way. Ultimately, you guys are such an important part of this, and I want to have a really strong sense of community here. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'd really like to do more of this type of thing where I can interact with you guys as this whole thing continues to progress. And so with all that being said, that's going to be it for this AMA. Thank you all so much for watching and submitting questions and just being a part of this whole thing. It really means the world to me to be able to do this and to make a positive impact. I'll see you guys next week.